Hey guys, welcome back to another video. This is going to be the final part of your work in progress critiques. The first one we are going to take a look at here is Felix's illustration. Felix, this looks really, really good. I love the color that you are using. The composition that you ended up using is really good as well. And overall, I think they did a really fantastic job. Oh, let me just get something here. Sorry about that. I'm just having a little bit of sorry about that. I guess it just kept the audio just kept switching between different areas here. All right, so hopefully this fixes it already. All right, so going back to your work, Felix, really, really good job. The expression looks really good. I'm loving the textures that you are using here. I think the textures looks really good. The idea about having the reflection in the acts, I think is such a, it works really, really well. We get to almost see his face without actually having to look straight into showcase his face here. Um, I think it manages to hit the rule of thirds really well. So if you divided it up, and also the background. As simple as it is, I think it kind of works. I like the horizontal light just come kind of filtering through. I do have to say, critique-wise, I think the colors are a bit too saturated. It feels like I don't know, what comic book was am I thinking of? Like a horror-based comic books, or even the art for I forget which one is this. It's like a version of Alice in Wonderland where she has like a dark hair. I can't recall. I might have it might come to me like after I do the critiques, but it definitely has that horror genre vibe with a high contrast, and the colors are really, really like uh saturated, and also the light is very strong as well. I think since we have a couple like another week and a half or so to work on it, I would love for you to challenge yourself in creating like a really layered in terms of color illustration. Like, putting in the local colors, letting some of those local colors shine through just a little bit more. I think that once you do that, everything will just really come together. Because right now it does have like a chaotic kind of feel to it. I think we could dial that back down just a little bit, just a tiny bit, and then bring in more of the illustrative elements in. So what I mean by that is to either go back, start a brand new illustration, and then just, set it up, or you can work directly onto what you have right now because I think you have a really good base. Okay, so let me create a brand new layer here. What I'm going to do, actually, let me copy this here. And then I am going to yeah, copy that so that I don't mess around with the original. And then I'm going to use the layer mask here, or the adjustment layer. I'm going to go to levels. I'm just gonna brighten it up just a little bit so I take away some of those shadow. I'm gonna bring those back in on a brand new layer. Just having like a mid-tone where everything is within the middle range and not too much dark or not too much light will really help you add some colors into it without running into too much problems. Okay, so I have that. See, I just got all the dark layers. I'm just going to merge these two together. And now, since you already pretty much have it set up, I'm going to use local colors to continue adding it in. So I have a really nice opaque block in. So create a brand new layer and set it to multiply. I'll go to the little Red Riding Hood fox here. Let's say I want her hair to be actually like orangey red foxy color. So setting up to multiply, I'm just going to paint that in. What we want to do is to bring those highlights back in a way that it makes everything just feel um, like there's more layers to it than just high key and dark shadows. Like I said, you have a really good base here, and we're just using multiply to add some of those blocked in colors back in. And what I want to do too is to add more colors. Before it's very it's leaning towards like almost 95% warm red color. So we want to kind of balance that out, 80% warm, 20% cool, or vice versa. So I'm going to introduce some more colors in there. That's why I really like that blue jeans that she's wearing, because it creates like a pop of color, like a cool color amongst like a very warm color palette. Let me lower the opacity, and then you could definitely do this in sections, or you could just do the whole thing in one layer and then do another overlay, blending mode, and so forth. So I'm going to create another layer. This time I'm going to set it to overlay. And I'm just going to start adding more colors in here. There's blue. I'll pump up the colored blue here. Since it's on a separate layer, you can lower the opacity for it and continue on. Maybe I could set it up at, yeah, I could go back to the multiply layer, which is this layer right here. I could add that yellow back in, that really nice warm yellow color for like the tips and some areas. Now, the things I'm showing you here are suggestions. You can definitely keep working on your illustration the way it is. Maybe you're still halfway through it and you're still kind of figuring out how to render it. That's totally okay. I'm just kind of showing you a couple of ways to basically just go about trying to make sure that the form has a lot of like a dimension to it. And one of the ways is to just make everything opaque and then add the light on top of that. We'll merge everything together, and then we'll continue adding in some colors. I'll go back to maybe soft light, play around with the blend modes, really try to figure out which of the blend modes work the best. 'Cause like I said, it looks really, really good, but it feels like it's missing a little bit that in between form that would make your illustration like really, really come alive. So now I'm just plotting the colors like that. So let's say I'm pretty good with this. I blocked in most of the colors in there. Now I want to start rendering. Right now I'm gonna render over the textures because I want to work on the form itself first. And I'm also going to try to phase out a little bit of the line art. You could keep some of it, try to explain overlap, but I would highly recommend just using a hard brush on a separate layer and just render things out. Like, you know, render it out using opacity. And while I'm doing that, I'm also cleaning areas up. So what I did with the blend mode is basically just to set it up. For that, hard brush, different strokes here. Let me just pick something here. There you go. A lot less intrusive background music. The background music just basically allows me to concentrate just a little bit more. Because sometimes while I'm doing these critiques, it could be my mind sort of wanders around. So I need a little bit of music, and hopefully you guys appreciate it as well. I'll try to keep it as slow as possible, but it's a really kind of nice background thing here. All right, going back here. Remember the form. It's going to be a sphere, cube, cone, and cylinder. Treat every part of this like a basic shape. So like the, the fringe, the bangs here, it's just going to be a sphere. So if you light the sphere based on the light source, it's going to look like that. Excuse me. So spend some time in this portion. Again, I'm also trying to paint out the line art. As I'm rendering, I'm also starting to think about texture a little bit, like the fur. Maybe I could just use the brush to sort of add that in. Make it, the hard brush creates like a really nice texture. I did it on a couple of the critiques, but sometimes it's good to do it in black and white. Doing it in black and white, like a value rendering, will help take the color out of the way for now. And then you can build the color um using the blending mode instead of just actually working with it. Excuse me. Here, I don't want it to be flat, so I'm going to create like a bit of a shape that kind of jots out here. Take the opportunity to find shapes within everything. Like instead of having flat eyes, just imagine that to be like a round, a round sphere inside, like an eyeball is. It's gonna create little grooves here that explains the eyelids and all that stuff. Excuse me. The shape of the face. It's gonna have an overlap. Simple rendering will really add a lot of dimension to your shapes. Separate layer. So utilize those layers as much as you can because it can definitely be very helpful when you're trying to isolate some areas without wanting to touch, everything else. As I'm working, I'm kind of merging everything together. Now you could work totally different than what I am than how I do right now, and that's okay. I don't want you to work like me. I kind of want you guys to just if you do, then great. But if it doesn't work for you, then that's cool too. I just want you guys to maybe pick up a few things here and there and apply it to your own workflow. See how I'm working just in the baseline mid-tones. I'm not doing hard shadows or highlights quite yet. Maybe a few indicators here and there, like here. Again, see how I'm painting out the line art? Because the line art's it's kind of a bit of a crutch, you know? It overly explains shapes. Use overlapping shadows instead. Like here, it's going to create an overlap shadow, so those areas are going to be a little bit harder. Just find a zen in this. It'll be so much like easier for you once you guys start rendering it out for hours and hours and hours. Just find a little bit of peace in it. Let it be your peaceful time. As before, a little bit after. All right, so let's say you render it to this point. You render everything out, a little bit of the fur, the the hunter's hand. Now let's just isolate one area and let's add some shadows. So I'm gonna use cool light. And I'm just gonna add some shadows. Since the light's going to be warm, I'm just gonna use a cool shadow pass here. I'm just gonna do a generalized thing here. Remember that everything has form in it. And when you apply texture to it, wrap it around as well. That will make it more convincing. And then here's my shadow layer. I could use an eraser or I could use the layer mask here to start adding in where the light is going to hit. So it's going to hit here. It's going to hit where the hair is. And it's going to hit top here as it wraps around. It's going to hit his hand as well. So what I'm doing is just basically hiding or temporarily erasing the shadow layer that we created using the layer mask. I could use a hard brush on this. And if you do it this way, it also kind of takes the guessing out of like what kind of colors of light am I going to use. Using layers will allow you to kind of just experiment with it. Since it is a separate layer, I could lower the opacity if I need to. I could always double down on the shadows later. Right now, I'm just mapping out the basic shadow layer here. Like I said, you just create another layer, set it to multiply, use the same color. This layer is probably going to be my cast shadow layer. So I'm going to add a cast shadow. Lower it. There you go. Then the next layer is going to be my light. I'm going to take a soft brush. I'm going to take something like this. I'm going to set it to overlay. And it's just going to kiss that page with a little bit of that golden color. And then I'm going to go to color dodge. Remember color dodge, use it sparingly. I'm going to use a low opacity. Just going to create that light. Lower the opacity if I need to. But these things right here, do it till the very end. Or at least the color dodge part. Do it to the very end because, as you're working on it, you're still gonna change things until you're like, okay, I'm almost done. Time to add in the light source. Just to offset all the warm colors, maybe some kind of a cool lights coming from this side. So I'll just use an opaque layer. And I'm going to paint in a little bit of color on this side. You're gonna take your time. Just have plenty of time to render this out. Just give yourself, don't time yourself well. Figure out how to use the time left that we have on the illustration. Like that. Um, Now, of course, you can't just rely on the blending modes alone. You still have to go back in there. Maybe I want to introduce a little bit more colors that I couldn't do with the blending mode. So I'll add maybe like a bright lemon yellow here just to add an extra bit of highlight. Add some extra details. Poor Red over here, huh? She's getting really beat up. I'm adding a little bit of reflection there. Her tongue is going to be moist, like all tongues are. So I'm going to get a little bit of highlight here. Maybe I'll go, okay, it doesn't sell it quite yet. So maybe I'll add a little bit of moisture underneath the eye. See how that sells it now, all that little extra detail that I'm painting over. There you go. So that extra bit of time just rendering it out just gives it so much life. And then when it's time to add the texture, let's say look up blood splatter texture. Mm. I'll set it to multiply for now, see how that works. Instead of just letting it sit right on top, I go to edit, transform. Maybe I'll use warp. And I'll use warp to try to mold it around the spherical face. So that it just doesn't sit like a flat surface. And then I can use the eraser and try to make sure that it's blended in there. I don't want to just use some texture and just put it on top right away. I want to make sure that it's strategically just added on. So maybe it's coming from the mouth. I could even paint some areas in there. Maybe a little bit blood from the nose. So be mindful of how you add in those textures. There you go. So that's kind of how I want you to treat it within the next week and a half or so that we still have time to work on. And just spend some time. It doesn't have to be highly detailed, like as far as here, but just enough that we can see a bit of a bit of extra like in between rendering there. I really like what you're doing here though. That little I forgot what's it called, but that little red line where the light is. I think that looks really cool. Maybe I could add a little bit of that here. Excuse me. Color dodge. Maybe not as strong. Again, just what layers are for. There. They're pretty good with that. Again, use the more visible light, add those towards the end, or use separate layers. Oh, don't know what I did. Use a layer. There you go. That's basically it. I just kind of want you to just go further into the rendering of it because I think you basically have everything set up already really, really well. All right, so yeah, hopefully I've given you a lot to work with here, Felix. I think that you have such a really cool illustration here. Um, very good setup. I like the background. You could, I would highly suggest render out the background as well. Maybe not as render out as the characters in the foreground, just enough so that we know that there's like, uh, there's form to like the trees in the background and also the little, I guess, burrow in the cliffside and even the pine tree in the front. So, so that it's more cohesive all throughout. All right, thank you very much, Felix. Can't wait to see your work in progress or your final illustration. Thanks so much. Up next, we have Louise's illustration. All right, Louise is coming along really, really well. I like the extra bit of moss and gunky textures and liquids that you're starting to add in. I think that really adds to the story. Um, and also some of the changes that you have made with the tail and the arm and everything, I think it's starting to look it's starting to come together. Yeah, really good color choices. I like the cool color on the arm and also on the tin soldier because our eye immediately goes to that because everything else is this like hot toxic green color. So really, really good job there. All right. So one thing I would recommend for you to do is to um, just not to overwhelm yourself, is to basically um, you know, work in areas. Like isolate one area, work on it for a little bit, maybe like work on it to like 75% done. And then go to the next area, 75% done, next area, 75% done. And then once you're pretty much done, working 75% on everything else, then you can see it just come together, right? And also, what you want to do is to, after you do that, then do it all over again. Like finish one area, finish one area, finish one area, and then finish everything all at once, like the whole general illustration. One thing that I always say too is that hold off on the light. Don't add in the light quite yet. Don't add in too much of the special effects. Do it towards the end. Because right now you're still working on that background. So hopefully you have this on separate layers. But yeah, work on separate layers and also don't do the lighting effects and the special effects quite yet. Just do the basic stuff. Do the neutral colors, do the local colors, local values, stay within the mid-tone range. Don't add in too much dark shadow. Don't add in too much highlights. Or else, once you start adding in the colors using the blend mode, it's not going to stick as well as it would have if you have midtones instead. So what going back to that though, what I would highly suggest, just by looking at your illustration here, is to work in value. I'd rather you understand values than having correct colors and how to use the colors. I think the basic foundation, the fundamental thing is to understand how values work together to create an illustration. I take a strong value illustration over a um, rough color, like a hastily put together color illustration any day. As long as you understand the values, how form works, using values, light and shadow, colors, colors will come in a lot easier. Like it'll just click. I honestly believe in that. So what I would highly suggest for you to do is to, especially with the extra bit of time, like the extra week, is to go back, image adjustment, black and white, and just go back to a black and white illustration for now. Add colors afterward. Again, it's going to be so much easier. So what I want you to do is to understand how the brushes in Photoshop work, to create that rendering effect, and also even just with the basic brush, and also understand how forms are created, how the basic shapes, the square, the sphere, the cone, and the cylinder, work together to create all these organic and more complicated shapes. All right, so let's go back here. First thing I want to do is to check my values. So go to Image, Adjustment, Levels, and let's understand the values that you have. Here, everything is within that mid-tone range. This is your dark slider, mid-tone slider, and highlight slider. So you're not having a lot of highlights here, not a lot of white, maybe just a little bit on the very, very strong end of the spectrum here. But then not a lot of darks, not a lot of blacks, a lot of midtones. So what we want to do is to just use the levels here to create just a little bit more of a balance. So this is going to be like a dark illustration, right? So let's use the midtones, play around with it, lower the light, and already we're shapes are starting to pop out. Before, if you squint, it's sort of hard to make out the shapes. All I'm seeing right now squinting is the dark shadows right here. And that's basically it. I'm seeing dark shadows and midtone, nothing else. But if I play around with the midtone, you can squint while you're doing this, like mess around with it, go left or right. Now everything started to take shape. The midtones are coming out just a little bit more. And it's accentuating like the shapes that you have. And then I'm going to take the dark, just bump it up again. I don't want like pure black. I just want dark midtones or high light grays, light grays or dark grays. Don't go black, don't go white. could also use the slider right over here. Taking the light slider to output levels, if you lower the white part, it'll create like a mid-tone all throughout. To darken it, if you use the dark here and go up, it's going to brighten everything up. But let me use this, lower it. I want to stay in this mid-tone range right over here. All right, good. So this is where I want you to work. I want you to work in values. And then, like I said, pick one spot, stay there for a little bit, then move on to the next, stay there for a little bit, and then so on. But you also don't want to lose everything. Like, you don't want to focus on one thing. Like, I know it's kind of a weird balance, but you don't want to focus on one thing, because if you do, you'll get lost in that one thing, and then everything else will be kind of, just kind of left behind and not worked on. So you want to focus on one thing, but then not entirely. You still want to move around the illustration. So going to this area here, what I'm going to do, you have a really good base already. So what I want to do is work on the rat. That's what I'm going to work on for the first layer right here. And then for that, I'm going to use a hard brush. I like to use a hard brush that doesn't have the pen pressure on it. So it's a flat brush. Oh, way too big. So it's a flat brush. If it still has a little bit of a give to it, turn it off right here. So I'm gonna have just a flat brush like this. I think what's happening here is that you're using small brushes, and I want you to kind of think of it like your finger painting. Work with it it's like your finger painting initially. Use like a really broad, large brush, and then as you start adding in the details, you go smaller and smaller and smaller in the brush. So again, use a hard brush that's flat like this. So if it has a pen pressure, make sure to turn off the pen pressure and make sure that the opacity pressure is on. All right, so here it goes. Remember, go to the shapes of sphere, cone, cube, and cylinder. I wish I did this with a smaller brush. Cylinder. And your light source is coming from this side, right? So that means you're lighting your object like this, your sphere, your cone, your cube is going to be lit the same way, and then your cylinder. So think about those individual shapes and find those shapes within your more your more complicated shapes. So the rat here is basically made out of a sphere, cylinder, sphere, cylinder, two spheres for the brow ridge, and then this one right here could be like a cone. So that's what it basically is. All those individual shapes: sphere, cylinder, sphere, cylinder, and so on. So I could lower this. I'll lock it so I don't accidentally mess with it. I could turn it off and on anytime I want. I'll create another layer right underneath it. And then with that broad brush, remember, turn this off, turn that on. I'm just going to take what you have and treat it like basic shapes. I'm pressing lightly on it because I still want your illustration to come through, because I'm going to use that as a guide. And then the shadows are going to come from this side, so I'm treating it like, where the shadows are. So go broad with it initially. Don't work too hard on it. Just want like a nice pass at it like this. So what I'm doing is just, again, be broad, be general with it. Instead of using the brush to create like areas like this, use the brush, click on the other areas next to it, like the other values, and use that to reshape it. Pick up, paint, pick up, reshape, pick up, paint, pick up, reshape. So I don't want you to turn on the pen pressure because that's gonna make you want to make you want to just you know do details. I don't want you to do details right now. And even though you have shadows, I want you to forget about those cast shadows. You can add those later. So be broad, just gonna be loosey goosey about it. Again, we could shape it later because we still have your original drawing underneath. And again, I'm staying mid-tone. I don't want to add black. I don't want to add white. Turn this on. So this is a sphere. This whole shape is a sphere. Right here. And the cylinder. Cylinder. And so on. And at this point, I can then create a brand new layer again. This time, work with a smaller brush, but I still turn off the pen pressure, so I still have a flat brush. And here I start adding just a little bit of darker value, just to explain all the different shapes. Here. So if you ever used an oil paint or acrylic, this is basically what you do. You map it out. You figure out which is the easiest one to work on first. In this regard, like the rat is the easiest thing. I'm not working on the arm right now. That could come in later. I could do that on a separate layer or just do it separately because it is its own thing. It's made out of metal, different textures, the whole shebang. Right now, I'm working on the rat with its furry body, and that's basically what I'm concentrating on. I could start adding in a little bit more mid-tone just to add some light. Like the highlights can be right here, so I'm adding in a little bit of highlight from the color palette over here. Sorry. And here I'm also indicating like a little bit of pattern. Maybe the rat has a little bit of a band around the tail. And I'm not worried too much about making it really smooth. I just want to just do a general render on top of him. Okay. See that? Just basic hard brush. Next up, this is when I start working a little bit smaller still. And this time maybe I could turn on the pen pressure, which allows me to create, little thin lines. And here I'm going to use like a dark gray. And what I'm doing is just reinforcing the drawing that we had earlier. So maybe what you want to do at this point is to highlight everything, hit Command G for the Mac or Control G for the PC. So you have it on a separate layer, a separate folder. So you could turn this off and on anytime you want to see where you're drawing. So I'm just redrawing the areas that I want that to be in. This is also your opportunity to, even though you have an idea initially to draw a certain way, maybe you want to start adding in some other details in there. Maybe I want larger teeth so that it shows up from far away instead of having it be really tiny. Sometimes going broad with it will be visually much better. So I'm just going to do that, see how that works. Here's where the arm's going to be. So I'm just going to, again, separate layer. So you can always change it if you'd like. And this is where the leg is. So right now, I'm not thinking in terms of line art. You're thinking of ambient occlusion. So, an ambient occlusion is basically having just really, if you put an object with lots of limbs in a brightly lit room or like a overcast day, then the light is just going to be fairly general. No hard light, no key light, no hard shadow, no cast shadow. It's just like an overcast day. The only thing that's there is like the overlapping shadows. So the shadows in between the forms, the different arms that overlap with each other. So kind of like this leg and the body, there's like a little shadow. So that's all I'm indicating. Same thing here. I don't want to think of a line art because a line art will flatten your illustration. So what you're doing is just adding in those overlapping shadows instead of a line art. Again, be general with it. Don't take too much time. Don't hit the leg. That I'm not doing like a line. I don't want to do that. I'm just adding in where those intense overlapping shadows are going to be. And right now with the fur texture, not even in my mind. I just want to work on that basic shape. I can work on the textures on another layer, or the fur texture. And I'll show you a great way to do fur. All right, that's pretty good. I'll continue rendering it out. Maybe I can start adding in some little bit of highlights here and there just to show, hey, okay, the whites of the eyes. Here. Again, be broad. Do not overthink it. Just start rendering it out per layer. That's where the tail enters the water right here. The leg, and so on. I'll call this one rat. I'll say, okay, that's pretty good. Oops. Cat. Time to move on to the tin soldier. So again, with a broad brushstroke, I'm just gonna keep it fairly mid-tone. And then I can continue working on it. Here's overlapping, so you're gonna get like the dark shadow underneath. I can redraw that jaw like we did during the hangout. Here I'm treating it like a sketch, you know? You're still in this stage. You don't have to worry too much about super rendering it out. I just want it to come through as a drawing first. Oh no. Oh, here you go. reshape it. It's losing a bit of that shape on this side. So just learn to just be comfortable with the brush. Control it with pen pressure. Use a hard brush with the pen pressure on, opacity on. You could turn this off and on if you need to. Here you go. Here's another sphere. Just based on the light direction, the shadow's going to come from this side. Cylinder. Start indicating a little bit of detail if I want to. And there you go. And you could continue adding on some more values on top of that. But again, I'm not being too detail oriented. I just want to make sure that the basic shape comes through like that. All right, so let's say you work on everything, the bricks, the Tin Man, the boat, like in separate areas. So now it's time to go back. I'm gonna create another layer, and maybe I want to add fur texture. So this one, I'm just gonna use the hard brush again. And this time I'm gonna lower the flow to a low percentage, and I'm just gonna use this to add a little bit of fur. And still, if you're gonna try to add fur in a way that kind of like a line, you're gonna do this. It's not gonna look like fur because you're seeing it as individual fur. What you want to do is to imagine a clump of hair or your own head. Like if you see your own head, it's a mass of hair. It's a big old hairball. That's what you want to try to pass his body off as. So instead of like little individual things like this, let's start out with a large brush, low opacity, so that I could get like a almost like a dry brush kind of thing to it. I'm just gonna add texture, and that's gonna create like a fur texture. Like that. See how like those textures almost look like little bits of fur? And then the thing that's gonna really pass it off as a fur is the silhouette. So you have the silhouette like this. It looks like a smooth shape. So what if I add a little bit of, little things coming out, and then I'll take some of that light fur and just let it go out a little bit. That now looks like fur. Like you don't need to add every single strand of fur or hair or what have you. What works for it is the texture in the middle and the silhouette that it creates. So that visually your audience will look at it and go, okay, it's not this smooth surface. There's like a little jaggedy part to it. So little bits of fur or fibers coming out. So you're just basically trying to fool the audience, you know? So now that edge looks like a fur. The inner part here, same thing. Just create like a fur-like texture that goes around. Then you have to use some light. Like that. The little edges here, the overlaps. Use references. I highly, highly suggest using references. go to the AAU Pinterest page. I have a lot of references on like animal fur and what have you to help you guys out. As I'm doing this, I'm also cleaning up my shape. So you could, since you have the bricks in the background already, I'm just gonna take some of the values around it and just use it to help clean up the edges. And here, instead of a flat white of the eyes, there's a shape in there. There's a sphere, like a ball. Your eyeball is like it's a round shape, and because of that, treat it like a round shape. It's gonna look like a sphere. And then the light is gonna be right here. You're gonna get a lot of shadows in between, and that's what I'm doing here. And this is what I'm starting to like reshape areas again. Pick some area like use the Option key or the Alt key. Pick up value, put it down. Pick up value, put it down. And as I'm doing that, I'm finding more shapes. Maybe I want him to have a cheek. So I'll reshape this area here and add a little light here. Because it has like an overlapping cheek. If it's too messy, go larger brush-wise and just reshape that. There you go. Now it has a cheek. And then for that little folds in the nose, line, line, line. I'll use the surrounding area to reshape it. And I'm just going to use the light to reinforce it. I can just go smaller as I go on. I go smaller and smaller. I can turn on the pen pressure, start adding even more values in there to really make your illustration like really come to life. This highlight. Gotta start to pop off. But for the highlights, I know I used white here, but I used some mid-tone instead. Build up the white. Yeah, I'm reinforcing the fur-like texture. This is when you start adding in. See each brushstroke? I imagine it going like this. And each one of those are probably made out of like 100 fur. So you don't want to do like little individual fur because that's just going to make it too noticeable. Just imagine 100 fur, 100 fur, 100 fur. And that creates like a clumpy shape. And here's the metal part. This is going to be a different texture, and so on. So this is really what I want you to do, or at least suggest you to do, Louise, is to just step back to black and white. Make sure that the rendering is on point. Treat every individual shape and give it some love. You know, find where that midtones are, work broadly, and then as you keep working on it, then you start adding in the details with a smaller brush, but use a larger brush initially to just build up and carve. That's what you're doing. You're building it up and then carving it back down. As you go on, you make it sharper and sharper and sharper. If you treat everything like that, it's going to be so much easier because you're thinking in steps. If not, then you're looking at your whole illustration and you're just going to be like, oh my God, what am I going to start next? Which area should I go for next? So think methodically, think like just think in steps. Think ahead. I'll work on the larger rat first and then go for the main character, the Tin Man, then the background. Um yeah. So yeah, just think about it. Work in little areas at a time, go broad, and then whittle it down, and then leave the light for later. When you're done doing that, tag me, and then we can work on the light together. I'm doing another Zoom hangout this Saturday, the final one for the semester. Yeah, yeah, I'll make it the final one for the semester. But yeah. All right, Luis. So hopefully I gave you some ideas on how to go about working your illustration. I'm always here, so let me know if you need help. All right. Thanks, Luis. It's looking really good. You just need to kind of, focus on different areas so that it's more manageable. All right. So up next here, we have Kevin's. Kevin, this is looking so good. And just like the last time, is it a different composition again? Almost feels like it's a different composition, but I might be wrong. Maybe you just added like all the other people in the background, and maybe that's why it feels like a different composition. But it's looking really, really good. It looks like a painting, which is really, really cool. Great colors. I really like the expression on the face. Yeah, I think that you have a really nice base here to work on. I think just for initially looking at it, I think we just need to do some touch-ups and maybe some enhancement of colors and maybe using some of the transform and liquefy tool to just, edit some areas to make it maybe some structure or anatomy just a little bit stronger. So the first thing I'm going to do here is to copy the uh, illustration, and then I'm going to go to actually make another illustration like this, fill it with gray, and then set this to saturation. This will help you look at your values and see what may need to be worked on. So far, your values are really good, but I can always, do a little bit more. So click on that layer we just copied, and then we're going to go to our layer mask or sorry, layer adjustments, and we're going to levels. Here it shows that you have a lot of midtone to dark, but not a lot of light. So what we're going to do is mess around with the midtone, just bring a little bit light in there, and take the highlight down slightly. See how much more contrast that is now? If we turn off our gray layer, that's basically how it looks like. The great thing about the layer adjustment, you could turn it off and on anytime that you want. And you can adjust it, continue to tweak at it anytime as well. As opposed to using the one in image adjustments, then it's going to be like permanently going to change your illustration. And we don't want to do that. We want to always give ourselves a little bit of wiggle room to make changes here and there. Next up, I'm going to filter, liquefy. Here, I'm just going to make some suggestions and maybe some tweaks here and there, just anatomy-wise and so on. So the first thing I'm going to do is make sure that you have this brush. If you haven't used liquefy before, go little by little. You don't want to make such a drastic change, or it's going to change the illustration completely. So what you want to do is use a larger brush, the very first brush here, and just go little by little. For example, here, the upper part looks great. Maybe his head is a little bit too big, so I'm just gonna use it to make a little bit of change. And then maybe the waist here could just be a little bit larger. Feels like maybe it's a little bit thin in the waist area here. Give him a broader shoulder. You can also mess around with the opacity of the skin. So here's a before and after. If you go to show backdrop, you can show before and then after. Before, after. Well, it's showing this because it has that layer underneath the original layer. So you're just showing what the changes that you made. And for her, same thing. I'll just pull back a little bit. See how it almost feels like that white part in her neck, like the collar looks almost like she has a floating head. So we might need to do something about that later. But I'm just gonna pull her slightly, just a bit more structure. Maybe his leg. And then I'd say that's pretty good. So here's before and after. I think it gives him a much stronger structure and also gives her a much stronger pose as well, just by slightly enlarging her back right there. Now again, take your time with it because as you can see, I moved around the background too. So, take your time with that. Don't do it as fast as me. Make sure that you don't mess around with everything else. All right, so up next, I really like the light that's coming from here. I think it looks really beautiful. We could do something by adding a little bit of something in there just to make it look more epic, but we'll talk about that in a bit. But right now, looking at it, it's like this part right here is really strong because you have really sharp areas in the foreground, and then in the background, it's nice and soft. So that's what you want to do. You want to get the depth of field. You want like the as further it goes, more desaturated, and it's a little bit more blurry. But here, I feel like that texture is a little bit too much. Like it stands out a lot. Like right away, it's the first thing I saw because of how hard that texture is. So soften this, and it will help you help create that push that depth that you wanted even more. And also just the approach to the billowing smoke. I think you could add just a bit more structure to it. So for example, let me just open this up. Like this. You wanna, add structure to it. So let's say you have a fire like this, and then you want the billowing smoke. So overlap, overlap to light the fire here. And when in doubt, use references. So I'm going to treat all those little spheres like that. Now we want to add a little bit of reflected light onto the smoke areas. Yeah, like a little bit more structure to it would kind of tie everything together. And then you can use the overlay. and then use color dodge on top. Something along those lines. Sometimes it's a little bit too much. You could always erase it. There you go. And then if you want to flatten everything, filter, blur, Gaussian blur, and that will be pushed to the background instead of having like really strong um, hard pixels just coming out from the background here, like that. Another thing that I think would help push the I really like the effect on that like the spark right here. But just like we did the smoke and the fire, I think we could treat it the same way. See how like some areas are hard, but some are not. So instead, what I think would be stronger would be to take like a hard brush with the pen pressure on and start out with like a really bright yellow. We're gonna build it up. Like this. These are just examples, but I'm just going to show you how the easiest way to set it up. Like that, right? That's our base. That's the start of the spark. And then I'll use a soft brush, just like we did with the fire. Use overlay. Maybe start off with like a nice orange. Like this. You can mix it up. Maybe use a golden color. And then use a color dodge right on top. And that will create that bit of a spark. Use a different orange here. Zoom out. Just see how it almost glows. I'll also use a larger brush to kind of just have that just effect everywhere. And since you really want like a nice glow there, that's going to create a spark. And the spark is going to create light. So I'm just going to try to push that idea even more by creating a brand new layer. I'm going to take some of that spark color, and this is where I go in and just use it to help create planes on the body. This will add more light. It'll make that spark more epic looking, and it will also help shape your objects or your characters. So take advantage of any bit of light as much as possible. Like her hair, like that's such a strong spark that her hair is gonna have like little bits of highlight in there. That blade is going to reflect a little bit of light. Her clothing here is going to reflect a little bit of light. So it's all coming from that. So I'll spark. And also we'll see how this kind of just blends into the background. It looks almost like she has a floating head. Use that to maybe add a little bit of light in there so that it doesn't look like it's just a floating head. And it's just a normal layer. I'm just using a little bit of orange. I could control it by erasing it, but I'm just going to carve out more areas. This side of the relief is going to get a little bit of light. this part, her, her armor here. So if I turn this off and on, see, almost like that thing just created a light. And also a little bit of light here and there. And after that, I'll create another layer. I'm use the soft brush. I'll go overlay, and then just kind of add a little bit of a spark to everything. Just look how dynamic everything is, especially with all those little lights bouncing about everywhere. So if I turn these off, turn it on. Another thing that we could do is to enhance some of the light in the sky. You don't want the sky to be too much, but at the same time, you also don't want it to recede way too much too. So I'll use your cue in the purple. So I'll add a little bit of purple in there, like a really rusty purple. Maybe set to overlay. And just add a little bit more purple and color in there. And then I could always lower the opacity if I need to. And could use color dodge. I want to enhance some of that that light here. Yeah. Just a little bit of like a nice glow everywhere. And then going back to what I mentioned before, using that really beautiful sunlight in the back, like coming through the clouds, and smoke. At the very end, to do this at the very end, not while you're not while you're still working on it. I'll just take a large soft brush, so a large soft brush like this. I'll take a little bit of white and just add like a nice, like an ambient light just coming in. Well, what this will do is that it makes him fuzzier, even though you're not blurring him. You're just using that light to make her the most important thing in here. Lower it if you need to. Just an extra bit of haze. And then hopefully you also did the rain on a separate layer. I feel like maybe the rain is a little bit too distracting. I feel like there's too much of it. I would like take away, let's say 30% of it. Because you have so many things going on already that maybe the rain is almost kind of distracting you from seeing all the cool little details all over the place. So I would either hold off on the rain or just do it just a little bit. And if you're going to do the rain, use something like this is what I would do. Take like white. If we want that direction, maybe do a little bit of placement here and there. Here, here, so on. Like, like purposely place them everywhere. maybe more up here. So like strategically place them to like so that they're not hiding everything. So maybe put most of it over here on the top. Maybe doing overlaps like this, but not hiding their face or take away from too much of the details. And then I'll go to filter, blur, motion blur, and place the direction the way that you're setting up the rain. Lower the opacity if you need to, and so on. All right. So those are basically my recommendations. I definitely have some more ideas in there, but I don't want to overwhelm you too much, there, Kevin. But other than that, your illustration is looking really, really good. Great base, beautiful colors. I love the way that you set it up. All the action that's happening in the background is really, really good. It doesn't distract from your main character. I mean, she definitely stands out. Mulan just stands out right over here. Just a couple of things like messing around with anatomy and structure, but other than that, it's not too bad. And also just a couple of details and enhancements here and there, and I think you're going to be all good. Again, we have an extra bit of time to work on this. Hopefully, that's enough to implement the things that you want to implement into your illustration. Like I said, it looks really good. I think just a few tweaks here and there will just take it to the next level. All right, Kevin, thank you very much. Again, if you need help, let me know. Okay, so finally, we have Joanna's illustration. Last but not least here. Joanna is looking quite good. There's something really nice and romantic about it. Again, I don't know if I show you the reference I had. It's called Up and Down. It's like a movie back in like the early 2010s or whatever. Kirsten Dunst. It just reminds me of that, like star-crossed lovers from different planes, and I think it worked really, really well. I like what you're doing with the background. I think the blue with like the northern light kind of feeling to it. It's looking really, really good. Your characters, I think, are very charming. I'm glad that you're working on the anatomy just a bit more. It definitely could be a little bit more rendered out because right now it has like a 2D feel to it, especially given the amount of time that we have. I think we could push this just a little bit more to have a little bit more dimension on the form. The I like the blue and like I said in the background, but I think that's hiding all the floating islands. I think that's one of my bigger concern is like the floating islands in the back are being hidden. And I think we could do something where they still show up and they don't have to be super colorful, but you know, you can still t tell that they're there. They're just not like just hidden behind all the light. So we'll address some of that and address a little bit of the form. So, like I mentioned in the last critique, I think that, you definitely could push the form just a little bit more and also the structure, some of the overlapping elements, especially given that you have like that little shoulder part here instead of like a line that does this, let it overlap, create folds in it. So even if you leave the line art, like you don't have to take out the line art completely, but you still want to make it feel like everything's not painted on. So for example, so this is your opportunity to just really go with it. Like stick the line art, maybe here, maybe it overlaps. So you have a little bit of a fold like this. See how much that makes a difference? Just little bits of things like this will allow you to create like a fully fleshed and that character. So a little bit this, a little overlapping elements here and there. Maybe give her some necklace that's floating around, or instead of a straight line like this, maybe give it a little bit of form. Maybe that's a collar. Just something like this just to interrupt that really basic shape, the basic silhouette. Like just give it a little bit of like I guess interest in there. Like that. And the thing is, it's good to have brush strokes. Sometimes having everything really rendered out and too perfect looking, like the rendering, isn't sometimes as interesting. It's sometimes better to just, be a little bit more painterly with it. Be a little bit more free in the way that you add the brush strokes. Like the line art is very confining. So sometimes it's good to just take like a dark value, create like another silhouette, and then just use the colors around it to just block it in. And already that creates so much interest in there. And maybe here the shoulder. What if you have like almost like a sweetheart kind of neckline, but then the button up comes down and the buttons. And that creates a lot of interest again. And then instead of having like a really straight line like this, have that come out, break up that silhouette, and then adds a lot of interest. So I'd rather that you just go crazy on this, like add some details in there, break up that smooth silhouette, give them like a lot of form using the light and using the shadow. Doesn't it to be like super perfect and everything. Like this is your time to really add character to your characters, give them personality. Um, from where she's from, what kind of clothes are they supposed to be wearing? Like this kind of dress, and then it has like little folds just to break up that silhouette. Shoulder right here, and then maybe here, like how tight that is, like break it up, mess with that silhouette. Just like a look at your own sleeve and how it comes out. Same thing here. Don't be afraid to just add a little line to show that there's a fold in there. Pick up colors around it and just start painting it in. You have a really good base to work with here, but we just need to push that the design aspect just a little bit more. Maybe here. And they're from different worlds, you don't have to kind of confine yourself to traditional attire. What if he's from the normal world? So of course he's just wearing like, maybe a jumper or a sweater, a knit sweater, like add textures to it. But she comes from like this dream-like other universe. So maybe here she's wearing like a little corset, that, and then there's a line. It's a little bit of a detail here on her dress. Yeah, and maybe here a little bit detail. See how much that really adds in there? And then after that, you could go to a brand new layer, set to multiply, and maybe for the skirt, I want it to be a darker purple. So I'll just use multiply blend mode and just add a nicer, darker purple here. So it breaks up the colors. So it's not just one color. Maybe that's for the inner shirt. It's gonna have that dark purple color. Ideally, maybe the corset should be darker so that you could keep the other areas lighter, but this works too. And the great thing about this separate layer, you could go to image, adjustment, hue, saturation, and then you could change the color to anything that you want. Maybe pink's better. And okay. See how much more depth is happening here now, even with simple little lines that showcases the details and everything else. That's kind of what you want. It gives it life, it creates a lot of interest to everything, and also breaks up the silhouette. All right, so let's go to the face. Like I said, the face looks a little bit flat. So let's use the light from the dot from the star to add more planes to the face. First thing I'm going to do is take that light and bring it up to a much brighter yellow here. And what I want to do is just add a little bit of areas here. So you can do that. That creates already a bit of interest. But just as I'm doing this, I kind of noticed that there's not a lot of feature here. What if you add just a little bit of red just to showcase her lips? And you could do the same thing with it, set it to multiply, so you could add the colors in there. Maybe give her a little bit of an eye color. See, that creates a lot of change. Like it adds a lot of detail in there. Um, Another layer set to multiply. What if I want to give her a little bit of depth to her eyes? Maybe some kind of an eyeshadow. I'm just erasing away areas I don't want. What we just did. There you go. Creates a little bit of interest, deepens the eyes, gives it a little bit more dimension, and so on. So stuff like this, to just add a little bit more. See how you're adding in just a little bit here too to create dimension. Make it stronger. Use a hard brush like this and just continue to add it on. See, a little bit of lines like this will add a lot of interest. Yeah. A little bit of nostril action here. Kind of missing. Same thing on this side. Just a little nostril. Since she's a lot paler, let's use white. Exactly. See the sleeve here? That looks really good. Do the same on this side. That will help it out. There you go. Maybe add just a little bit of line on the ear. Something as simple as this. To make sure that there's a little bit of something in the ear instead of just it being flat. And here we're losing a little bit of the structure for the arm. I feel like we can, once you flatten everything together, you could go to filter, liquefy. This will allow you to use this brush in particular, which is the smudge brush. And then you can control the size of your brush. And all we have to do is just move little by little to make some changes that we need. Like the arm here could be a little bit thicker. Again, do this little by little because it's a little bit too strong, right? So just inch it out. Make sure that you try not to move everything else. I mean, it will happen, but try not to move everything else. The hands are really good, by the way. Some areas you can't change. Like here, the arm looks like it's a little bit too low. Just that we have, so here's before, after. So use the liquify tool to make changes. But here, the arm looks a little bit like it's placed differently. See, it's going up here. Here's the other shoulder. It should be a little higher, like this. So we're just gonna draw it in and paint it in. There, that fixed it. Here the colors are too similar. So maybe we can filter, liquefy, go in on it. I'm just gonna tuck this one in just a little bit so it makes that shape stronger and then put the chest out. Pull the shoulder in. Here, with just a few little line art, let's say this, I'm able to add, not that, I want the brush. I'm able to add a little detail, maybe just a collar. Again, we want to push that silhouette. There, even a little bit of detail makes a huge difference. So maybe this is a sweater over like a button up. I'm doing a lot of button ups a lot in my own work for some reason. Uh, and even here, just a few little bit of dash like this creates almost like makes it seem like a knit sweater. Yeah. So those are the main changes I think that I want to leave you with, Joanna. I don't want to overwhelm you too much. And then I think we could definitely do something with the background. So work on those and then let me know once you work on it so I could take a look at it again. and then we can take a look at your background and see what we could do. All right, really good colors. I'm really liking the color of the background again, with your characters against it. I love the hands. I think you did a fantastic job with the hands. The connection with the eyes are really, really good. Um, I wish his eyes were as deep as hers. So maybe do the same thing for him. Just deepen it a little bit, add a little bit more dimension to it like this. So that it kind of matches her a little bit more. So now they're connecting a bit. Because before it felt like his eyes are a little bit flat. Good colors. I just noticed that I kind of made her look almost like Aurora. I don't know if that was intentional or not, but I thought that the corset and everything looks pretty good. But you could totally do a different thing. Just add some details in there just to give them more personality and character. Um, yeah, good characters. Just need to work on a little bit of the structure and the anatomy and the way that light bounces off of the planes of their faces and bodies. And yeah, so work on those, and then we could definitely talk about the background another day, so that it won't get too overwhelming. Because I think that the background has a totally different approach to what we just discussed here. All right, Joanna, that's pretty much it. Okay, everybody, that's the critiques for all of you guys. If I did not give you a critique accidentally, please let me know. I'll do one for you as well. And as always, please let me know. We only have a couple of weeks left. Tag me if you guys have any questions. I'm not exactly sure what you guys need until you let me know. You know your own work more than I do, even though I'm critiquing them. So let me know, and we could go from there. All right, guys, thank you so much. Please pay attention to the posts and the announcements because especially for the due date for the final project. Again, if you guys haven't already seen it or will see, it's going to be moved by a module. So it's going to be due by the end of module 14 instead of 13, which is going to be a few days from now, which is like a Tuesday, this Tuesday. So yeah, it's going to be due next Tuesday, end of module 14 instead. All right, guys, that's pretty much it. Thank you, guys. See you in the next round of work in progress or final projects.